Welcome to Hey Dancer. I am your host, Millard Duray, and this week we are going to pick up right where we left off. You see, last week I gave you tips on how to ease back into dance class before you even stepped foot in the studio. You know, that like in-between phase where you've made the decision, I think I might want to go back to dance, but you haven't gotten that far yet. So anyway, if you missed the episode, I highly recommend you go check it out. We talked prep work, mental, physical, emotional, the stuff that really sets you up for success. But now you've done that stuff and you're ready to take class. So now what do? Let's talk about how to make that return really successful. By the way, in the event you haven't yet, please follow my podcast or subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and rate, review, and comment and like the video. Thanks so much. It goes a long way. Now, let's get to it. So let's begin with homework. You got to do a little bit of homework, before you sign up for a class. I would recommend to take some time and do some research on studios nearby, on the teachers at those studios. Probably my best suggestion is to go on Instagram and just scroll through the feed of the studio, of the teachers. Are the classes built around progression and training, or is it mostly high-speed combinations and endless counts of 8 and performance clips with cameras and fancy lights, Are there reviews and testimonials and even comments under those posts on the websites, on Google, that give you clues maybe about whether a teacher prioritizes growth, technique, and inclusivity? Or is it just about, creating footage that is kind of flashy? That matters a lot when you're returning from a long break. I remember when I was at Millennium's certificate program and taking 10 to 12 classes a week, and there were just so many teachers to choose from. And the studio director, Jin, who I really adored, we had these one-on-one meetings, every week, and I would fill her in on my progress and my thoughts, and I was very transparent. And I remember in the beginning, she and other people like the work studies who worked the front desk and even students in class I became friends with, everybody suggested, go to Instagram. This is where you will, find the teachers and see their choreography. You can get a really good idea of the classes, of the vibe. Is it right for you, Oh my God, that class, you can tell it's like way too fast the way that choreography is. You know what? That hip hop class feels like it's kind of my vibe. Anyway, that research really helped me build a schedule that really served me, not one that overwhelmed me. I also might recommend to look really closely, intently at what the dancers are wearing, even some ballet classes. Sometimes it's like the vibe is just baggy clothes and you're the one walking in with tights. It's like, interesting. I wish I would have known that before, but if you did your research and you looked at the videos, then you would have. Yeah, for hip hop, you'll probably be fine with loose, breathable clothes and sneakers. But what about a jazz class? That is a lot trickier. At some studios, like there's one locally where I live called T. Millie. You probably have seen a lot of their footage on social media. They have a very recognizable aesthetic, these particular lights in the background and stuff. I remember taking my first jazz class there and just being mortified. Like my jazz shoes didn't work in all of my tricks, right? Like a wet rag and rosin spray. And I'm not a jazz dancer who will do the barefoot thing and the sock thing. And then I just kind of looked around and it was like, oh wow, everybody here is either barefoot or in sneakers. But my sneakers were actually really not built for dance at all. Anyway, my point is that if I had done my due diligence and paid attention to their jazz classes that T. Millie posted online, I would have seen 0 jazz shoes. Nobody wears darn jazz shoes at that studio because you can't. And I started to have this antennae, I guess you might say, for it. Every jazz class I saw T. Millie post, the majority of students wore sneakers. And then I began to see like the brands of sneakers, because if you're a dancer, you know that not every sneaker works on every studio floor. You want that right blend of gripping and slipping. You want to be able to do a pirouette at least, and sometimes you can't because there's so much resistance. So it's got to be the right sneaker. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm watching their videos and I'm zooming in, I'm scaling in. Okay, this person's wearing this particular Adidas and they got 3 pirouettes. Oh my gosh, I bet those are pretty good sneakers to wear. Like, it sounds silly maybe, but the more prepared you walk into a class, the better off you're going to be, even even down to the shoes or no shoes. What is the energy like? You can grab a lot from that video footage. Is the room seemingly encouraging or intimidating? A recommendation I have in this area is to call the studio. I mean, I've done this before quite a few times, and T. Millie being another example. I remember once I called them after this horrible jazz class experience, and the person who picked up the phone was like, oh yeah, no, like our studio floors, she mentioned the particular kind of wood or something and then no bounce. I forgot, but she said, no, like, yeah, people don't wear jazz shoes here. Or I might say, hey, do you know if this teacher does a lot of floor work? I mean, I normally bring my knee pads, but to be honest, right now I'm not really feeling floor work. And the thing is that the people working the front desk are almost always dancers who almost always take these classes. They're very good resources for you. So take advantage of that. And they want to talk to you. They're kind of, there all day, and in between classes, they may be a little bit bored. So, tip, before you call, make sure you look at their schedule, and you probably want to call like 20 minutes before a class begins or after a class starts, so not right when a class is starting, okay? This is about being prepared and reducing excuses. I'll get into that in a second because, the less hurdles you have starting out, the more likely you are to keep showing up. And yeah, speaking of being prepared, let's talk warm-ups. I mean, if you've been away from class for a while, warm-ups aren't optional. I'm sorry, but they're not. They're essential. Your body just needs time to get reacquainted with dance again. I mean, I think, a long, good warm-up is like mandatory regardless, but especially if you're returning after a long break hiatus, right? According to the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science, proper warm-ups reduce injury risk and improve performance, especially for dancers returning after time off. They recommend warm-ups that are at least 10 to 15 minutes long, gradually increase in intensity, and include dynamic movement to wake up the muscles and joints. So as you're researching classes and studios, look for signs that a real warm-up is built into the structure. It shouldn't just be a few head rolls and isolations and a quick stretch, which I promise you is kind of what happens at most classes these days, at least here in Los Angeles. You want a teacher who takes the prep seriously because your body deserves that kind of care, especially right now and as you're returning to dance. And I can't tell you how many times I have DM'd the teachers myself. I don't care. I reach out. I'm like, hey, this is my story. I keep it. I truncate it. I try to make it as short as possible and give a little bit of information, a little bit of intel, and just say, hey, do you think your class is right for me? Or what do you do when it comes to XYZ? And almost every time the teacher responds. Teachers, for the most part, want students to show up, prospective students, and feel really comfortable. And the teacher wants to know that that student feels the class is right for them, because nobody wants to teach a class to somebody who isn't looking for what they have to give, Okay, now let's talk about proximity. It might sound basic, it might sound silly, but oh my gosh, it's not. Choosing a studio, choosing classes that are close to home or work or wherever you spend the most of your time dramatically increases the likelihood that you'll actually go and show up. And here's why that matters. Behavioral science consistently shows that reducing friction makes habits easier to stick with. In Atomic Habits, a very popular book by James Clear, it's great, I've read it a few times, explains how minimizing the number of steps between you and your goal increases the chances that you're going to follow through. That includes shorter travel time, fewer scheduling hurdles, and even more convenient class times. It's all part of it. Even something like a 10-minute shorter commute can impact how you show up. I remember when I first returned to dance and I couldn't find any adult studios near me, like none that offered like really good training, right? There was one studio, but it was for kids and teenagers. And I had to call them and I had to show up and take meetings with their owner. Anyway, long story short, and if you want to check it out, by the way, it's in my Return to Dance docuseries, link is below, but I was the first adult they allowed to take classes with their kids and teens. I was that persistent. Not just in that trying to find a studio that had, the proper training I needed, but also one that wasn't so far away. And then it actually didn't quite work out. You'll see why if you go and check out the episode. The point is I did my due diligence, and I knew going in, proximity, especially after a full day at the office, would make a huge difference in my success. Now, the same thing goes for cost. If a class feels like a splurge, you may hesitate next time. Look for packages, look for deals, or memberships that work with your budget. So class becomes sustainable, not some financial guilt trip, Now, also one of my tips here, start in your wheelhouse. Pick the style that's your go-to, the one you're most comfortable in. I'm all about cross-training, as in, taking as many styles as possible, and the more versatile you are, the better a dancer you are. Of course. I'm all for challenging yourself, but this is your first class, your first weeks back after a long break. Let it be in a style where your body already knows a thing or two. This will help you build confidence fast. And also, confidence is, I think, one of the first things, period, that you want to build, because you want to stay in class. And if your confidence is shook immediately, the less likely you are to keep showing up. Speaking of that, drop a level. That's my next tip. Drop a level, even in your strongest style. I know you're a good dancer, you've had a break, but if you were advanced hip hop, don't go right back to advanced hip hop. Start a level or two down. Trust me on this, especially if you've been out for quite a while. Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Because building confidence is just as important as rebuilding technique. Psychologist Albert Bandura's research on self-efficacy, the belief in your ability to succeed, shows that mastery experiences are the most effective way to rebuild confidence. Basically, when you do something well, your brain logs that win and starts believing in you again. If your first class back feels too hard, your brain might register that as a failure, which chips away at your motivation. But if you have a class where you keep up, even if it feels too easy, that win rewires your brain. You start thinking, I can do this. It's been a while, but look at me go. And then your brain starts looking for proof that you're right. That's confirmation bias working for you. So, hey, ego aside, if it's been a while, try a foundational or a basics class, even, beginner level, whatever. Let yourself succeed. Let your brain catch up and remember, I belong here. This might be where you take some classes online, dip your feet into some choreo from the privacy of your own home, which I know I talked about in my last episode. This could be a really good way to build confidence before you actually go back into the studio. Now, speaking of building, I know I've used that word a lot here, build your support system, okay? Say hi to someone in class, make a friend, compliment, their sneakers. I've talked a lot about shoes, I guess, so far. Follow dancers on social media who also take that class. I want to take this class. Let me go to IG. Wow, look at these people commenting. I think I'll DM them. I'll reply. I'll let them know. I want to show up too. Make friends. Why not? Build your dance community. It makes a huge difference in showing up and sticking around. Another tip, pack the essentials to class, right? Water, a towel, knee pads, snacks, whatever your thing is. It sounds basic, but those little things make you feel like you belong there again. You're prepared, you're back. Okay, you made it to the final tip, and that is accountability. Yep, find a dance buddy. Maybe it's somebody you just met online like we just talked about, or maybe it's an OG dance bestie. I don't care who it is, set a date and go together. Or hey, if you prefer to go alone, go alone. I totally get it because that's me. My point is, tell someone, your best friend, your partner, your parents, your kids, your siblings, your social media followers, whatever. Let somebody know, hi, hello, I'm taking class this week, and then ask them to check in on you because accountability works. In a well-known study from Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University, participants who shared their goals with a friend and had regular check-ins had a 76% success rate in following through, compared to just 43% for those who kept their goals girls all to themselves. That is a huge jump. You can't deny it. So whether you say it in a DM or in a group chat or speak it out loud, let someone root for you. Sometimes that's all it takes to get you back in the studio. All right. That's all I got for today. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Hey, do your dance fam a favor and spread the word, share it, and follow, subscribe, like, and it just all means a lot. Leave a comment. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. What are your tips for prepping for dance class? Finding the right studio or the right teachers or, what to wear, all that stuff. Do you think I think things through too much? Or are you like, no, these are actually really good tips? Sometimes, and I am one of these people at times, you can get too stuck. You can get too much into the overthinking. Call it the Virgo side of me. Sometimes just show up. Do your due diligence, maybe a little bit of research, like I said, but just know you and your patterns. Don't make the prep time be longer than it needs to be. And you know what? Maybe this is the final tip. I didn't even know was my final tip. Give yourself a deadline. Talking about accountability, part of that should be deadlines. Tell your people, your friends, your followers, whatever, hey, I want to get to class and I want to do it before X date. And, make sure that, they follow through with you and you follow through with them, that they check in with you, because you don't want to get so stuck into the habit of prepping for class and getting everything so perfect that just becomes the noble obstacle and you never actually even show up to class. So give yourself a deadline. And in my experience, a self-imposed deadline that nobody is really, aware of doesn't do a whole lot. This is where, again, the accountability thing kicks in. Have people know your deadline so that they can check in on you, and you're much more likely to follow through when you've spoken about it to a friend, publicly, whatever it is, okay? I hope this all helps, and I'll see you next time.